Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites like Industrial Equipment News and Manufacturing.net and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday, except this one, when we go live. Anna, we have a brand new setup, and we get to share it with everybody on demand because, of course, new setup means YouTube's just not going to work today.
Yeah, tech problems, new setup. The new desk, I don't know about you guys, but I'm loving all this luxurious space. I feel like our original desk was like our starter desk, like our starter home, and then this is...
We've moved up. You know, the family's gotten bigger.
You know, we got to spread out a little bit.
We all needed a little more space. It was weird not having to be mindful of talking with my hands and accidentally like bumping you guys. But you know, it's also
we are also aware.
Yeah.
I also feel far away.
Have you been holding back this whole time?
I don't know. It's you guys just feel so far away. This is like when your kids move out in college, I assume.
You have empty nest syndrome?
Yeah.
You can't see them when they do that, David.
We're
not that far away.
I have empty desk syndrome. Jeff, you know, friend of the podcast, former coworker, Bill Kanan made this, and she's a beaut.
Yeah, well done, Bill. Good work.
How are you doing this week?
I am good, man.
Yeah?
Yes.
Very good. This space isn't having the same impact on you?
I don't want to be mean about it, but I'm kind of enjoying it.
That's fair. I don't have feelings. But before we get started with our first story this week, we have a new word from our old sponsor, Oracle NetSuite. This week's episode is sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. Going live with KPIs and turning those metrics into real results can be complex, confusing, and challenging. Fortunately, many of the issues have been encountered by others before, and practical solutions already exist. This new field guide outlines field-tested advice on selecting and tackling common performance measurement problems you will encounter in a simple, structured way. So download Maximizing Your KPI Results. Right now, there's a link to it in the body copy, not in the live chat, but next week it will be. All right, our first story this week. Hybrid electric plane maker announces first U.S. factory. Last week, Aura Aero announced plans to build a 500,000 square foot airplane factory at Daytona Beach International Airport. The French startup designs and manufactures hybrid electric aircraft, and the factory will be the company's first facility in the United States. The $172 million production and assembly plant is expected to create some 1,000 jobs. Aura's plane, the Electric Regional Aircraft, or ERA, uses a combination of jet fuel and electric propulsion that it says slashes carbon emissions by nearly 80% compared to conventional regional jets. The ERA, or ERA, can travel up to 900 nautical miles with 19 passengers or 1.9 tons of cargo. It can recharge in as little as a half hour on the company's own chargers. The company hopes to have the ERA make its debut flight in 2026 and enter service 2 years later. Aura says it has $9 billion in orders for more than 600 of these planes. The Daytona plant could supply 100 planes each year. Construction is scheduled to begin in 2026, operations to start in late 2028, and deliveries will begin in early 2029. Jeff, could the ERA be a suitable replacement for the prop planes still in service at regional airports?
I think so. I mean, this is really interesting because initially when you see 600 pre-orders like this, for a plane that is of this nature that's untested and isn't even going to be available for 5 more years, you're kind of like, boy, are they still going to be there? Who are these coming from? Maybe these are from big stakeholders that can do this, sort of take a swing on some of this stuff. But when you look at it, and all these orders for the most part are coming from these regional airports, that they're not just going to throw money out there for something that they don't believe in. So I think this is very promising for Aura in terms of all those pre-orders and where this could go. Obviously, there's all the benefits, all the things that we want from this sort of hybrid type of plane that they're putting out. So it could be really interesting that way. I think the other thing that we could see developing here is after everything sort of came back to quasi-normal or the new normal after the pandemic as far as air travel goes, a lot of these regional airports suffered mightily. People weren't getting on planes as much. Just in our business, we don't travel as much as we used to.
Yeah.
Doing a lot more stuff, through Google Meets or whatever. So there's a huge cutback at these regional airports in terms of how many flights were going out, how much the bigger airlines were supporting them. So if we've got something like this that is more economical in terms of to operate and maintain, which that's one of the biggest costs that these regional airports have is supporting these older aircraft, this could be a real boon for them, especially if there's also cargo opportunities, not just passengers. I mean, you're looking at a smaller plane that's only 19 passengers, but it's really interesting to see how this could take off. We've got some time here before we're going to know for sure, unfortunately, but everything seems to be falling in place here. It looks like Aura really has everything lined up appropriately. And now with this plant coming online to support everything that they're looking to do by 2029, pretty interesting, and could be, like I said, kind of a game changer.
Well, and that stat stood out to me too. The 19 passengers or the 1.9 tons in cargo. It seemed small to me, Anna. But then I think of every time I was on one of those small commuter prop planes, I'm like, there wasn't many of us on there. And I also had just like a strong inclination that plane was made many years before I was born. And so it might be an okay time to usher in a new generation of aircraft to these regional airliners.
Yeah. And I think, you're seeing a lot of major aerospace companies looking into hybrid aviation, Pratt & Whitney, Rolls-Royce, Honeywell, and they've been making a lot of progress. And one thing I thought was notable, I read a press release from Honeywell about some of the things that they were working on, both the engine side and the electric propulsion side, and why. And they really stressed that these developments were not one size fits all. And I think that that's the important distinction to make here, because it's hard to not look at aviation developments through the lens of like a commercial airliner and what that means for airline travel. These are smaller, more application specific planes. But, if you look at things like urban air mobility and commercial deliveries and short runs at these regional airports, just because something is not tailored for the long haul flight doesn't mean that it doesn't have application and value in all these other areas. I do think that it is a compelling prospect. I was looking at kind of the pros and cons of hybrid for aviation, and there's a lot of pros and there's also a lot of challenges, I'll say. You have the fact that electricity tends to be cheaper than fuel often. Sometimes that can be leveraged further if you could, have your own power plant on site with solar or what have you. Electric is quieter, it's cleaner. To Jeff's point, it's simpler technology, so often there's less maintenance there. Conversely, it's heavier. I think there's still a lot to understand about keeping those lower density batteries cooler and understanding exactly how much range you have. I think that's where having that backup gasoline power is a huge help, right? So still some things to work out in terms of not just how they operate, but also the market acceptance. But I do think that to break in, we see so much technology hit the market first in applications like, transit and delivery, manufacturing, warehouses, things like that, where, the goalposts are a little bit different, but that's the point. So, I'll be interested to see if this hits market on time and how well it's utilized, because, Jeff, you're right. Like, it's hard to know if these pre-orders are real or not. Sometimes these companies that are still kind of developing that, they hang their hat on those orders, but they're not taking much money up front or whatever it is. So it's easy to tout those figures. But if it works, I think there's a lot to be said for this type of technology.
Well, and if you think about all the this could really give a lot of new life into the small regional airports. I mean, not just, I think throughout our region, but anywhere, because where are those regional airports taking you? You know, they're taking you to major hubs, all easily within 900 miles. You know, I mean, I think anywhere in Wisconsin, you're either going to Detroit, Chicago, or Minnesota before you go anywhere else. Typically. And I mean, hey, if you had to go, you know, a little bit further in either direction, I don't know, it could be a really good fit. I looked into this deal a little bit more because I found it fascinating that part of the story was the competition between Daytona Beach and Flagler County, basically two areas that are right next to each other, right? So first of all, this deal, according to the Daytona Beach News Journal, is going to create 1,000 jobs with an average salary of more than $70,000 a year. The county put up $500,000 in performance-based incentives only if Aura Aero makes good on the $1,000 jobs, paying $72,000 a year. The company is getting another $100,000 from the city, another 6-year break on property taxes worth about $3.58 million. Now, again, what's interesting is that Aura Aero picked Daytona Beach, even though Flagler County was offering them a better deal. Flagler County was offering them $1 million per year for 5 years in tax reimbursements, $650,000 per year based on the value of the plant's equipment. And it seems like the deal breaker or the deal maker for Daytona Beach was because of a joint recruiting effort that included Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So maybe 7 days before this deal was announced, Aura announced that it was currently building a 10,000 square foot hangar at Embry-Riddle for, quote, electric aircraft development activities. And it's also possible that Aura Aero gets capital financing from Space Florida to build this $172 million assembly plant. If that goes through, actually none of these tax incentives will apply at all. And it expects that to go through. So it was the proximity to Embry-Riddle and the fact that them and a couple of other stakeholders in the area were kind of really involved that made them land in Daytona Beach. And I thought that was pretty cool. Jeff, with a lot of these deals, it's sometimes weird to see, you know, with everything else that's in play, what winds up being the deal maker, so to speak.
Well, I think in this case, it's sort of an evolutionary effect here, because I think what we see throughout manufacturing, number one issue right now is workforce, finding the right people, keeping the right people. So if you have a partner that's ingrained within the community that is potentially putting out the perfect applicant to maintain your aircraft and work at your facility, seems like a natural fit. And that's going to take prominence over some of these tax breaks that you were talking about, which, you know, you mentioned them. And if we're talking about this deal 3 years ago, you almost can add a zero to a lot of those numbers. They were just getting so crazy with what communities were willing to give up to get those plants in there. So you've seen them come back to earth, which is a good thing. Yeah. And then again, you're seeing the manufacturer really place different priorities in terms of what's going to influence their decision.
Yeah. I mean, Anna, when you think of major universities or educational institutions that are involved in the aerospace industry, I mean, Embry-Riddle is like 1 or 1A, you know, right at the top of the heap. So I don't know. I think it's kind of cool that it's a win that goes beyond just this new production facility at the airport, but kind of throughout the community.
Yeah. And just shows too that I think their head's in the right place with the project. They're looking at more than just the money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what was it, 5 years before we see the plane? So let's just hope everything continues to progress on schedule. It's all good.
Yeah.
What could go wrong? All right. Our next most popular story, PepsiCo to reverse shrinkflation following consumer complaints. PepsiCo is sorry. The company just took it too far. PepsiCo wants to make it right, so it plans to reverse its shrinkflation ways following falling sales and rising consumer complaints. In a recent earnings call, execs said Americans are spending, quote, noticeably less on their snacks. Cheaper generic brands are in, name brands are out. PepsiCo's snack sales saw a, quote, surprise drop of 1% last quarter, and snack volumes fell by 1.5%. So, the company is adding 20% more chips to the bag and adding 2 more small chip bags in variety packs. In 2021, Tostitos and Ruffles, PepsiCo brands, shaved off 1 or 2 ounces across multiple products while keeping the price intact. Lipton iced tea, in another example, dropped from 1.5 to 1.25 liters, and the cost per liter went up 40%. Anna, is this too little too late for PepsiCo?
I guess we'll find out. Just to be clear, shrinkflation is a very cute way of saying price increase. Mm-hmm. It's just delivered to you in a much sneakier way, right? Experts say that shrinkflation can often be tough for consumers to document, even for them to pick up on, given that many people don't keep their old packages to compare. You have a pack of toilet paper that once was 20 rolls and now it's 18. Do you really notice that? Or cereal that was a 22-ounce box and now it's 18. Again, it's just, it's even harder for people to notice that, I think, if their price stays the same. But in the end, you're getting less, so it is a price increase. That said, I loved how the article referred to this as a surprise drop in sales, because to me, this sort of suggests that they expected that there would be no consumer backlash.
Yeah.
That they truly were trying to just sneak it in.
Yeah.
We know that there is a lot of pressure on consumers when it comes to grocery prices. And honestly, I think the writing has been on the wall elsewhere. For example, it's been many months since McDonald's said on one of their earnings calls that they had raised prices too much and they were losing business because of that. Way back in May, it was reported that Americans were not buying as much name brand food. The number, I think, was 1/4 of their groceries had reached 1/4 of their grocery spending was from store brands at that point, rather than nationally recognized name brands, even as inflation had begun to slow at that point. And I know that there are and were cost pressures on food companies. But unfortunately, the resulting price increases and shrinkflation, whether or not you believe they were fair, carried with them some risk, I think, because the impact was customers changing their buying behavior. Mm-hmm. And now you're losing market share to generics and store brands, and giving those buyers who may have been very loyal in the past a reason to check out your competition. And some of those customers might be gone forever. Some of them have realized, actually, this isn't so bad, this product be.
Yeah. I can scoop the taco dip just as well with the circular corn chip as I can the scoop.
Exactly.
It's forced me to learn that again.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so, I know there's debate on, whether or not the food companies were raising prices in line with inflation, whether to say, did they have to raise prices as much as they did? Mm-hmm. Not going to get into that. But I will say that whatever their reasons for the shrinkflation, now they're going to have to deal with the consequences of that. And some people are going to say, you know what, I'm Aldi brand now or whatever, and they might not get those people back.
Yeah, the surprise drop was a surprise for me as well, because the writing has kind of been on the wall for the better part of the year.
There's been so much analysis on this. Yeah. There's no way that PepsiCo is just like, what?
Yeah.
We did not see this.
Yeah. Jeff, they were victims here, taken completely surprised by slowly evolving, actually kind of quickly changing consumer tendencies specifically this year. But this couldn't have been that big of a surprise.
Well, let's remember the scale here because we're looking at percentage points. And we've talked about this all the time. Whenever we bring up food manufacturing and food processing, it's pennies on the dollar that we're talking about in terms of margins. So I could see potentially maybe some unexpected numbers when it comes to their margins and their returns and profits, things of that nature. Because there has been a lot of fluctuations within the food market. Just kind of going step by step here. Let's start all the way at the beginning. We know that from the very start of the war in Ukraine, that was affecting world supplies of wheat and flour. Flour prices, which when we talk about all these baked goods, that's a big part of it. Flour prices have gone up 30% in the last 3 years. That's going to impact their margins and their profitability. Coming closer to home when it comes to getting all those products from store to store, from the factory to the retailer, fuel prices have gone up. We have a driver shortage going on. So all of those logistics costs are also going up. Then when we actually get to the plant floor, we've seen it in a lot of cases, these workers are asking for more money. There's strikes, there's demands going on, and we want to pay them more because they deserve it for everything they did during the pandemic and have probably been underpaid for a decade. So when you have all of these dynamics, all of these factors coming into play, along with the very volatile nature of supply chains right now and trying to forecast and understand what's going to happen next, whether it is in consumer preferences, raw material prices, supply chain costs, all of those things are going to play a role in, again, impacting that price.
Mm-hmm.
Food processors are also in a very difficult spot here because as they do some of these things, whether you agree with them or not, raising prices, fewer product in the packaging, lowering all that amount, they're doing it to stay in business, okay? Now, you can argue the scale of that. I understand, okay? How much does Pepsi need to continue to make and all of that? The reality is they've got earnings that they need to hit. They've got benchmarks that they need to maintain.
Yeah.
And they're going to do what they have to. They're not going to come out and tell a consumer, hey, David, just a heads up, that next bag of Doritos, we're taking it down a half an ounce and we're raising the price by 30 cents.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. So then when they come out and they say, hey, guys, guess what? Good news. We're putting those 4 ounces back in and we're going to lower the price by a quarter. Everybody's going,
you're welcome.
That's what you were, what?
Yeah.
What were you doing? So what are the food processors supposed to do? Quite honestly, probably nothing. Just do these things and try to maintain customer loyalty by delivering a higher quality product and being competitive with probably a new brand or a new set of competitors. It's not just Pepsi, competing with their products against similar snacks, but also against those store brands, those generics as well. So it's, again, I can appreciate where they're coming from. The surprise, a little dramatic. I would have a hard time seeing that. But I think there's a lot of different market adjustments that are going on right now that sort of lead to these actions that they're taking.
Is this Pepsi trying to stay in business more or more appease shareholders?
Both. I mean, obviously they've got shareholders to make happy, but again, wages have gone up. All of these other costs have increased as well. Then you throw in, other factors that are now a part of the landscape, whether it's more security concerns, more supply chain, just getting their product into stores and to different locations is more difficult than it's ever been and more expensive.
So Pepsi trying to push consumers to their breaking point in terms of what they'll tolerate of price increases for less product. That's because Pepsi's the victim, not them just trying to see what they could take from consumers before they reach their breaking point.
I'm not saying they're a victim. I'm just saying this is what they're doing to maintain their current business level.
Yeah. They made $23.3 billion last quarter. Hard times.
They're a big company.
They are a big company. I don't know. It's to me, there should be no surprise that there was a drop. And also to me, it seems like, they just got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. You try pushing to maximize profit. Eventually, all people reach a breaking point, and then you pay the price. And hopefully, it's not as steep of a price as some others have had to pay in the past. But I think Pepsi just reached that point with snacks. I mean, you can't tell me that, Lipton iced tea became 40% more expensive to make 0.25 liters. Well, that sounds a little like gouging to me. A little bit.
Gouging?
Well, the timing is it's interesting because I'll grant that wages are higher, but supply chains have generally stabilized. Gas prices are pretty low right now. Inflation's at the lowest it's been in 3 years. I think there's a lot of the issues that started this that are not there anymore. They're not nearly as intense. So if their sales didn't surprise drop, I don't know, we wouldn't see any of these chips back. We would not get these chips back.
These chips would not be back in our hands. What I want to know is, Jeff, will we ever get to a time where the bag matches the volume of what's inside of it?
No.
No? Is that just part of the game?
Why is it a game?
No.
It's just what it is.
No, not a game. I
don't think it's a game either because the tortilla chips are like a full bag, and I think it's because they're sturdier. Do you want your barbecue Lays to just get destroyed because there's too many in the bag?
I don't know.
I think some of the air is protecting it, right? Am I right?
I don't know. I'm not hip to the chip game that I was talking about. Not like it's fraud or anything. I just don't know if you need that air in there.
You did bring up the term price gouging before. That seems a bit dramatic.
I don't think it is. I think that there are a lot of
We're not
brands out there.
talking about cold medicine. We're talking about chips here. These aren't exactly,
No, I understand.
a necessity for life.
No, I understand that because when it comes to shrinkflation, a lot of the things that you see mostly associated with them, we're talking about like snacks, we're talking about candy, soft drinks, stuff like that. So I get it, because pretty much the biggest argument is you probably could use less, and so I get it. But when you see pork, chicken, other staples like that, I don't know. To me, it does seem like, yes, they were trying to get away with as much as they could. And basically they had to go backwards.
Right. But why should they get their hands slapped either way?
Well, I mean, their hand's not being slapped. Everyone just chose not to play their hand. They were like, okay. It has been interesting through this entire process. I feel like maybe we're just more aware of it, but there's more of the people, like when they're shopping, they grab the bag and do that little dangle test for a second. That's poor choice of words. Little drop, they hold it in their hands and feels lighter.
I just pick it up and look at it.
Oh, well, it's because you're picking it like this. It's a whole different
Why
game.
would you? What do you got? Do you have like some sort of sensitive like weighting system in your wrist?
Yeah, it is. It's like, yeah. It's
we are learning about all of your superpowers.
Yeah, just two very dynamic load cells right here.
You know what? It says on the bag how much is in there.
Yeah, but it's you can't pick it up from the bottom.
And I know that you're good at math, so you should be able to tell which one's the bigger number, right?
I'm just saying, like when I was talking about the bag size matching what's inside.
Do you know which one's the bigger number?
Not always. No. So also, according to Lending Tree via CBS, 1/3 of 100 common consumer products it tracks have shrunk in size or serving size since the pandemic. The worst offenders, toilet paper and paper towels, as you had kind of mentioned. Another one that I haven't heard of, and I was curious if any of you guys have. Have you ever heard of skimpflation? That was a new one to me.
Isn't that the same thing?
Well, no. So skimpflation is when the quality of the product or service is reduced to save money. So like using cheaper ingredients or telling you that, you're saving the world when you opt out of a turn down service at the hotel. That's skimpflation.
How did we write headlines without, is it portmanteaus? Is that when you put two words together and one make up a new word?
Oh, I don't know.
I just feel like that's in every headline now.
Yeah. It's, I think because we have professionally reserved, just not tried to Benifer everything.
Yeah, Benifer started it.
And it's just horrible.
Thanks a lot, Benifer.
Yeah.
You got enough going on.
So watch out for skimpflation. That's the next one that's going to take the country by storm. All right. Our next most popular story. Boeing starts selling off pieces. You may have heard this, but things aren't looking too good for Boeing right now. Last week, Boeing announced intentions to raise up to $25 billion over the next 3 years. But it isn't wasting any time. According to Reuters, the plane maker has wrapped up a deal to sell digital receiver technology, the company's small defense subsidiary in Maryland that makes surveillance equipment for the U.S. military. Boeing is selling DRT to Thales Defense and Security, a division also based in Maryland of Europe's largest defense electronics firm. The terms of the deal haven't been disclosed, so we really don't know how much of a dent this is making in Boeing's $25 billion goal. But on Friday, Boeing's new CEO, Kelly Ortberg, announced plans to cut some 17,000 jobs and push back the launch of the new 777 airliner. Talked about it last week. Boeing reported a loss of more than $6 billion in the third quarter, and a large strain on the company has been the 33,000 striking machinists that have crippled production for more than a month. The union yesterday voted down a new deal that would have increased pay by 35% over 4 years and dole out $7,000 ratification bonuses to workers. Anna, do you think this is all part of Boeing's plan?
Certainly not the strike.
No, understood.
I know what we can do.
Let's make everybody mad. Yeah, the strike, I am hoping, is a blip in what is overall, it seems like a strategic overhaul on behalf of Boeing. When I first saw this, I was like, oh my God, is Boeing becoming the next GE, right? Like, parceling things off. I know they're two different animals. GE's really more of an industrial conglomerate, or was, but Boeing to streamline into some more pure play consumer airline company, maybe that would make sense at some point in time. When you look at the company's defense business, it's been a struggle. They've lost a ton of money. They've had a ton of like really high profile cost overruns. Even Boeing recently like pulling its own hat out of the ring on some deals because they couldn't get a guarantee that the company wouldn't be on the hook for cost overruns, and they just cannot afford to continue to do that. And you can see why. It's been suggested that a company like, say, Northrop Grumman would benefit highly from some of the assets in Boeing's defense division. They're really heavy on legacy contracts. They have a lot of existing revenue streams, but they don't have a lot of new irons in the fire, which is sort of the exact opposite of what Northrop Grumman is doing. Mm-hmm. So, maybe that would be a solid dovetail. I think there's opportunities there for Boeing. And I don't know what happens next, but I do think we should be ready for anything because we know that Boeing needs cash, right? And they need to overhaul to juice their non-existent sales right now. Many, many problems that they had before this strike also is, just another wrench in there, but a lot of stuff going on, as we know. I think it was widely expected that David Calhoun's replacement was going to come in and kind of clean house, and he's already laid out a 4-part turnaround plan. One of those is, quote, build a new future for Boeing by resetting priorities and creating a leaner, more focused organization. So I think shedding debt and streamlining would probably be a clear part of that. Mm-hmm. I would not be surprised if we see more of this.
Well, and as part of that, basically, Ortberg said we need to wholly change Boeing's culture.
Yep.
Is that something that's achievable right now amidst a strike, or is it something where we've got to sort everything out with the machinists and then work on the culture?
I don't know. I mean, that's a big question, I guess. They got to be doing something though, and I'll be interested to see how long this strike takes to work out. I think we saw this in other industries where at some point you kind of lose a little bit of public support and momentum when these big numbers and percentages start getting thrown around, like, oh, they're turning down a $35,000 or whatever it was pay increase, or 35%, but it was like $23,000 over 4 years or something. Yeah. So they may not have as much rope as they did 3-4 weeks ago. We'll see.
Because part of that was, it was a 35% increase, but when you looked at it over time, it wound up being like a 39.8% increase, and they were demanding a 40% increase or something like that. It's wild to me. And Jeff, last week on the podcast, we were talking, or last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, talking about how it looked like Boeing was going through about $1.3 billion a quarter. Now it comes out that last quarter, $6 billion. Yeah. And in the union vote, it wasn't even close. It was a landslide. 64% of members of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers voted against the contract offer. So we have just two real big problems here. And it looks like they're kind of far away from reaching a common ground with the machinists.
Yeah, let's put the machinists over here for a second. Just talk about this particular deal that they made.
Okay.
I don't understand this one. Because every time we talk about some new development when it comes to military aerospace, we're talking about unmanned aircraft, and we're talking about being used for surveillance, intelligence gathering, which tells me you probably need the materials, the equipment, the modules, whatever you want to call it, the components being built at this facility, which also turns out about $200 million a year in revenue. It's not a big company. Yeah. It's a very small subsidiary, but you would think there's a lot of growth opportunity within it. Agreed. So to see this one sort of selected and picked off in an area of the company that was sort of supporting it in a lot of ways, whereas the commercial airline business has been struggling forever, I couldn't connect the dots there. I was trying to understand why they would pick this particular company. Mm-hmm. Did you have something there?
Oh, I was just going to say, but their defense business has not been making money either. So, they got to decide where they want to be.
But isn't that mostly the defense business that's not making money? That's mostly tied to the Air Force One problem, right?
I don't think it's just that. I think they lost $2 billion on just defense in the latest earnings report. So, I mean, and this is after like 2 straight years of that division being in the red. So I don't know if they're trying to streamline, they're not getting out of the commercial business. Where are they going to start? You know, they have to do something.
Well, and I guess what I expected was not for it to be in this area, but it would be something that they were going to try to bring in-house. Like they cut ties with some sort of outsourcing arm or something like that, because I think that's created a lot of the issues that they have right now from a quality perspective. We saw how much they were outsourcing with the latest line of aircraft and what that was doing. I mean, can't get things up in the air.
Yeah.
So I was surprised to see this is where it was coming from regardless. The other thing that I'm kind of curious about is you've got all these folks on strike and you see the parent company selling off assets. How does that make you feel? And I'm asking because I don't know which way you go with this. Does it make you feel like they're panicking, now is the time to hold out? Or does it make you feel like, man, we better get in there while there's still some place to work? I mean, what does that create? And you were talking a lot about culture. What does this do for a culture when they start selling stuff off? If you're trying to bring everybody together and get on track, I don't know how this helps.
I've seen reactions from both sides of the spectrum. I've seen people react saying, Boeing's been buying and selling pieces of itself forever, to other people just saying like, this is the beginning of something that's going to be really bad. So I don't know. I know that personally, when I saw it, it didn't look good to me. I didn't even think about your point, Jeff. So DRT, they design and manufacture complex software-defined radio systems used by, like you said, intelligence, defense, homeland security communities that to gather, analyze, and share signals intelligence. You're right. That seems like a pretty evergreen
well, and they're even getting into like cyber defense and things of that nature, another huge growth area. So, yeah, interesting choice.
How about you, Anna? Do you think, because one, for me, I guess I always seem to have the same trajectory personally with these strikes where it's just, okay, completely understand where the worker's coming from. And then once negotiations start, it's just like, whoa, all right, they're asking for a lot. And then depending on where the other person comes back, it's like, okay, that looks like a good deal. This doesn't look like a great deal. I don't know. When I kind of looked at just the base level of what Boeing was offering, it kind of looked like a good deal to me. And I felt my, sentiments shift, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know all of the nuts and bolts of the agreement and what people are looking for. Sometimes it comes down to, things around time off or healthcare, things that are not being presented well in the media reports of those. So I won't comment on that. But I guess my only response to your points is that I just don't know if Boeing is in a position to be like, oh, I don't know about the optics of this at this point. Like they are in such huge trouble. They've taken such a huge reputation hit in the last, multiple years, but again, in this last year. And they're not selling anything. Their factories are shut down. Like they're in the red. They're in the toilet. Like, maybe it doesn't look good, but like, what are they going to do?
Yeah,
they have to do, like they just have to do something to pull some cash out of that business. And maybe they're just going to do what they got to do.
Well, and I think, so my understanding of the biggest sticking point right now is the union wants pensions reinstated. And Boeing met him with, how about $7,000? And, but when you look at the language coming out of Boeing, they basically say, we will meet you in the middle anywhere else but pensions. And so when they come out and just say like, it's a non-starter, I don't know how, for me, you keep fighting for that when they're just like, quit spinning your wheels. I don't know.
Well, and the pensions have been gone for a while, right?
Yeah.
It's not like this is a recent thing. So that was really surprising too. And I mean, I know we covered, so maybe I'm too close to it, but you'd think they learned some lessons from the UAW dynamic too, and some of the backlash that's coming as a result of some of those wins that they got during that strike.
Yeah, you're hoping for more of a like GM Ford outcome, less of a Stellantis outcome. I wanted to pull one quote from John Holden. He's the head of the IAM District 751 union. He said, quote, after 10 years of sacrifices, we still have ground to make up, and we're hopeful to do so by resuming negotiations promptly. This is workplace democracy and also clear evidence that there are consequences when a company mistreats its workers year after year. I don't know. To me, that quote sounded like somebody like, man, I thought we had it.
Yeah.
But it's a democracy. And back to the drawing board.
Yeah, the union leaders seem to be trying to push for this to be resolved, and the union itself is really sticking strong.
Yeah, fight for what you can get, but, make sure there's still something that you're fighting over. All right, our next most popular story, Stellantis to shutter and sell Arizona facility. Stellantis is under a microscope, especially after a 20% Q3 drop in U.S. sales. A part of the company's strategy is to cut costs and improve margins. So, Stellantis is selling its Arizona Proving Grounds, a 4,000-acre testing site in Yucca, Arizona. Stellantis bought it from Ford back in 2007 for $35 million. The facility includes vehicle dynamics, durability, noise, vibration, and thermal limit testing, and includes 100 lane miles of road surface. The grounds will close by year's end and, hopefully, be sold. However, little is known about who the buyer might be or if one even exists at all. The site currently has 41 employees, many represented by the UAW. It's possible that the Arizona employees will be placed on indefinite layoff, quote, which would entitle them to pay and benefits for 2 years. Others will likely be transferred to other facilities. Notably, Stellantis has another proving ground in Chelsea, Michigan, which it plans to keep in order to carry out tests. Testing grounds, as you can imagine, are quite expensive to operate, and Toyota actually has its own in Arizona that other companies can use for, quote, long-term engagements. Stellantis will reportedly take advantage of this setup, which is about 170 miles southeast of the Yucca Proving Grounds. Anna, this might have been one of the easier cuts for Stellantis, as it was, as it has very publicly been looking to get leaner and meaner.
Yeah, Stellantis has some work to do. And I hate to say this, but of all the options for cost cutting, they have to improve their liquid position. I just feel like this is not the worst one. Anyone who thought we'd see Stellantis get through this year without cuts is dreaming, in my opinion. In 2023, Stellantis had around 81,000 employees in North America. So selling this site, in my opinion, checks a few boxes. It's not a high number of employees, but it has heavy operating costs due to its size and the overall nature of what they do, their R&D. You have a regionally adjacent replacement for these activities that require a warmer climate. And then you also have a redundant, essentially, facility in Michigan. It kind of makes sense to me to move on from this one. I don't know if you mentioned this in the recap of the story, but last year when they were negotiating with the UAW, they presented the UAW with a list of 18 sites that they were considering either closing or consolidating because they already had some of these plans in mind. Again, like of all of their plants and locations, this is kind of a smaller scale in terms of impact to employees. What I am not totally clear on, though, is who they sell it to. Yeah. They dropped $35 million on it, as you said. That's in 2007 dollars. So it's got some value to be sure. However, I think this is an application that's not necessarily universal. Yeah. It's seen a lot of use over the years. It's been there for a long time. It started as an Army Air Corps training field. Ford owned it for 50-something years. Harley-Davidson has reportedly tested bikes there. It's described as having every type of test track imaginable. But when Stellantis itself seems to confirm that it has a viable alternative in renting space, like kind of just up the road, then a targeted buyer for this application just feels all the more unlikely to me based on that. And also, like, if there's one thing that Arizona has a lot of, it is vacant land. Therefore, so I'm not sure what, like, 4,000 acres on its own with no need for the developments that are there. It's not like sometimes you have space and it's like, well, we'll just raise what's there. We want the location. It's great for supply chain stuff like that. This is very specific, and it's in a place that, just drive down the road and get 4,000 different acres. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's got a lot of value outside of the developments that are on it, and the developments are very specific. So I don't know what happens here if they're able to find somebody to buy it or not, and if they're going to take a bath on that. I don't know.
Yeah, housing, really luxury housing.
I think it's in the middle of nowhere, though.
I know. I thought the same thing when they came out and basically said we're going to outsource this 170 miles down the road. Mm-hmm. It's like, but you need it.
Somebody needs it, though.
So like when you're looking at major automakers that can use it, so it's not Stellantis and it's not Toyota, you're already running out of ones that can afford it and or need it.
Yeah, and it's not Ford because Ford already sold it to you.
Yeah.
So
and it's hey, just okay, we'll give you a real good deal to take it back. Also, Jeff, in that list, Harley Davidson seems an unlikely candidate.
I will make the prediction that Tesla will buy this within 6 months.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay.
Here'd be the sales pitch.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not arguing with Stellantis' move here. Not only do they have the facility in Michigan, they also have one in Florida. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the one thing I would say is if you're looking to test vehicles in a specific climate, and we're looking at EVs probably being one of the one of the areas that needs the most research and development right now, or that automakers are going to be trying out, it makes sense to have this type of climate or this type of environment when you look at the buyer. The biggest EV state as far as purchasing goes is California. Mm-hmm. So being able to have somewhat proximity maybe to that operating environment makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think that might be the pitch potentially if you're going to try to position it that way. Like I said, I think what Stellantis in here makes a lot of sense. If you had duplicate, because I said they have the place in Michigan, they have the place in Florida, it was expensive to operate all of that. Looking to trim costs, I think we're still going to see them probably sell one or two of those brands here in the next couple months as well. So all of this fits together, except for the fact that at its core, Stellantis doesn't necessarily have like a quality issue or a brand issue. They've just got a straight up sales problem.
Yeah.
And when you do start talking, when you start talking about the fact that you're getting rid of one of your research and development centers, that can send a questionable message to your dealer network and to your customers in terms of how committed you are to growing and improving your product line.
Yeah.
That is the one risk potentially that comes out of this. So I think what they could have done to sort of bolster this, if they're going to make the announcement that they're selling it, is saying, hey, but this is the plan. We are going to continue. We haven't backtracked, or we're not doing less R&D, or it's not less of a priority. We're working at this facility. If it's going to be this one here in Arizona with Toyota, doing more in Michigan, doing more in Florida, whatever the case may be, I think that should have been sort of a supplemental message as well.
Yeah, just it's kind of redundant at this point.
Right.
And that's a good call with Tesla because, we also know that they're trying to pull any and all operations out of California that they possibly can. Yeah. And
but they have a test track at Fremont, and they're not pulling out of Fremont. That's their biggest plant.
Well, but I don't know.
Or their headquarters plant or whatever they call it.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe if the opportunity was to get as much as possible out of California, their CEO has seemed like he would like to get as much as possible out of that state.
I get that, but I do think I don't know. I guess I would be surprised if Tesla's sinking millions into something that they maybe don't really need at a time when they are not doing that well.
It's a great undisclosed location to test humanoid robots.
It's disclosed.
Well,
we just
this way,
disclosed
whenever
it.
their semis catch on fire again, they don't have to broadcast it and then try to justify it and not answer questions.
Yeah,
because they don't have belief.
Or robo-taxis. That's a lot of test track for robo-taxis and Rebovins.
Rebovins.
Jeff, talking about some of those brands that we're not sure what's going to happen. So one of them that I at least think is healthier is Dodge Ram and the Ram 1500. So I read this report out of the Detroit Free Press that Stellantis recently announced plans to expand its truck plant in Mexico as a, quote, relief valve for a U.S. truck factory expected to reach capacity in the future. This was at an event with Chrysler brand CEO Christine Fuel. She said it's not a cost-cutting move or a result of ongoing tension with the UAW. Quote, the plant in Saltillo does a really good job managing the complexity, and they're already building pickup trucks down there. Stellantis is actually not building Ram 1500 trucks in Saltillo, but they could be soon. And I don't know. This just seemed like another piece of news that came out. The Wall Street Journal also reported that the factory in Saltillo is expanding to bring Ram 1500 production there. I don't know. That was just another one that looked like another cost-cutting measure that wasn't, maybe necessary, not having the best optics, so to speak. Just because it's hard when you're asked, why is the production not being added to the U.S.? And just like, oh, we can't. We're making as many as we possibly can. But we're going to, build out this facility south of the border.
Yeah, you would think more transparent responses would be acceptable. Just saying, it just makes economic sense to do it this way.
Yeah.
Keep it at that.
Yeah, we're out of options. You're not buying it? You're giving me this look like, oh, here we go.
No.
Okay.
No.
All
I'm
right.
just listening.
All right. We're just curious.
David's trying to pick a fight.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pick a fight. We're too far away to fight now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're allowed to have your opinions, and whether or not I agree is a secret.
It is not a secret. I can feel the secret out of your eyes. I'm just like, she doesn't like that one. Doesn't like that one. All right. Our most popular story this week. GM just tested the fastest car ever built by a U.S. automaker. General Motors has once again made history. The 2025 Chevy Corvette ZR1 is the fastest car ever built by a U.S. auto manufacturer, and the driver was none other than GM President Mark Reuss. The GM team traveled to a track in Papenburg, Germany, where the ZR1 reached a two-way average speed of 233 miles per hour. They actually clock you going both ways, take an average to account for the wind. That was a fun fact for me, just like the more you know. The ZR1 is now the fastest current production car, priced under $1 million, and the fastest factory stock Corvette on Earth, according to the company. The 2025 ZR1 is expected to start around $1,800, a shade under $2,000, and you can get yourself a ZR1. It's expected to start around $180,000 and go up to $205,000, according to Car and Driver. In 2020, Corvette moved into a mid-engine architecture, and the ZR1 was the most powerful V8 engine ever produced by a domestic manufacturer. The achievement didn't just happen once. According to GM, 5 engineers using both ZR1 development cars on site topped 230 miles per hour. Corvette ZR1 lead development engineer Chris Barber said, quote, "This car actually overachieved." He added, "We didn't think 233 was in the cards." When development started on the C8 generation Corvette, the goal was 220 miles per hour, and then in testing, the car exceeded expectation. So the team just decided to push the top speed objective to 230. Reuss called the record-breaking attempt an exhilarating, surreal experience. Jeff, your thoughts on the ZR1, and not just... There are a couple of things to this story that are really cool, right? The fact that they brought it to the test track and it exceeded their expectations. So they're like, you want to try 230? Then they're like, yeah, let's do it. Then all the engineers get to do it. Then the president gets to do it. I mean, I think this is a really cool story coming from Chevy. And when it just comes to automotive development for a U.S. domestic manufacturer.
Yeah, it's exciting. And it's a great thing to tout, obviously, and promote, and that's one of the reasons they're doing this. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting is they have not released production figures on this vehicle. Yeah. Basically, when asked, they said, well, we're just going to make as many as people want, which, all right. Yeah. It's kind of interesting, especially for a vehicle, and I thought this was interesting, too, that tops out at about 17 miles to the gallon in terms of fuel efficiency. So when you look at all these recent developments we've been talking about, it's about electric vehicles, hybrids, things of that nature. So here we just get back to a good old gas guzzling, regular engine, and to promote and see what it can do. Thought it was funny too in the video. Jeff Gordon was basically there just to go, "Hey, that's really fast."
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Oh yeah.
Did you see that? They flew me over here to Germany so I could stand here and just say that's really fast.
He just watched.
Yeah.
So don't let the pro race car driver get in the car. Just have him there to validate how fast it's going.
Like they forgot. I mean, they're just asking around like, "Oh, who's gonna drive it? Do you? I mean, not him.
How about this guy who's won, numerous, Winston Cup championships here? No, not him.
No, definitely not.
Take this guy over here with the MBA.
Yeah, underqualified.
He's probably very good.
Yeah. What do you think is does the insurance company, after this story comes out, just goes, You had the president do what now?
I'm sure that was in consideration, and the other thing with this, and I think Anna's going to talk about this a little bit more too. They talk about that mid-engine design, and that is something that is set up for greater aerodynamics and fuel efficiency and things of that nature. If some of those things can come out of here, that's pretty cool as well, and see what that could lead to.
Mm-hmm. You can.
I'm going to let Anna say.
Oh, okay.
She wants to.
Okay, Anna.
I can't wait.
Okay.
Let me talk.
Is there any potential to sort of learn what they did with this application and perhaps, let's say, use it on future vehicles?
I think so. I think they can leverage some of this. I will say 17 miles per gallon is much better than I was expecting for you to say. But yeah, you talk about MPG, every automaker has fleet averages that they need to hit. So when you build a performance car where the goal is speed, there's definitely going to be things that you are looking at, like lighter weight materials and aerodynamics, as you said, that will help you achieve that. And I think all those things translate well into any efficiency improvements that you want to make if you're GM and just looking at your entire vehicle portfolio, like what's working here. So I do think that's like really the takeaway for me is that, sometimes I get like curmudgeonly about dev that I think is like,
going too far,
single purpose, like not progressive, and I mean progressive in the definitive sense, not like the political sense. It just where the goals are just like, here's a fast car, give us a lot of money. But in this case, I do think that they can't help but take away something from this development. And then not to mention, to your point, it's just been fun to follow. Chevy's been making the Corvette since the 1950s, the ZR1 since 1970, I think. Wow. It's now on its, I think, 5th iteration. And just the excitement of a legacy model being able to do this. Because I think when you look at, when you get to speeds like this, you're looking at like, Bugattis and Hennessy's and Koenigsegg.
Well done.
Koenigsegg.
Yeah.
And
you know what I mean? Koenigsegg? That's how I imagine I say it when other people hear me say Koenigsegg.
But with this, this is like Chevy Corvette. This is like an American brand. It's very historic. It's got this legacy reputation that I think like it's just so cool that 70 something years later it can still really rip and that can be, it's not like we're leaving it up to the French to like make the coolest performance cars that there are. Like GM's doing it, That's awesome. And I think too, they, the little touches that they put into this, like the split window in the back that was like a legacy feature of those ZR1s in the past. They brought that back. They really wanted to make it feel like kind of a little retro feel, but with this like insane speed. So just a fun project to track. And I hope something more comes out of it.
The Corvette, the most reliable car my family sees on the road and my kids respond with, it's a race car, Daddy. I thought just to pull a couple of things that were standard on this car out, I think makes it a little bit more incredible, right? The ZR1 set this record with a standard chassis and aero package, standard spoiler, carbon fiber ground effects, standard Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires, and aluminum wheels. The only thing that was exclusively developed for the closed course use was a top speed mode with a setting that adjusts the chassis control systems for max speed. But I thought that was another really cool part of the story. Just like, hey, so what comes standard on it?
Yeah.
Impressive achievements. And, always looking for more of these stories. They also talk about how their engineers made it possible using GM software, modeling, hardware expertise. One company, I can't remember that off the top of my head, came out this week and basically said their new modeling and prototyping testing software is going to take $10 million off the development cycle of any new automotive prototype. And we're just still scratching the surface in terms of what new digital tools are going to do to transform future automobiles. I don't know. I think it's going to be exciting to watch. Nope, we're not moving on to In Case You Missed It, because we have another word from our old sponsor with a new word. This week's episode is sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. Going live with KPIs and turning those metrics into real results can be complex, confusing, and challenging. Fortunately, many of the issues have been encountered by others before, and practical solutions already exist. This new field guide outlines field testing advice on selecting and tackling common performance measurement problems you will encounter, and it gives it to you in a simple, structured way. So download Maximizing Your KPI Results now. There is a link to it in the body copy, also in the live chat. Jeff, did you have a chance to check out this field guide? Because sometimes when we hear field guide to KPIs, it's like, you don't know what you're signing on for. But this one kind of breaks it down very simply into this is what others have done. It was almost a case study. This is what's been done before. This is how you can use it.
No, I think you nailed it there. I mean, when we do talk about these KPIs, it can be kind of the eye roll and white noise. Like, how much more of this do we have to hear? But Oracle NetSuite does do a nice job in breaking it down, going over a lot of different things in terms of what to do, what not to do, things to avoid. So it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're dealing with trying to get more visible KPIs or figure out which ones are working best for you or which ones to avoid.
All right. Well, again, link to download that in the body copy. Check it out now and let us know what you think. All right. In case you missed it, the stories may be not as popular on our websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, what do you have for us on In Case You Missed It this week?
The article I selected is titled Space Liver Could Transform Tissue Engineering on Earth. So researchers are pioneering the self-assembly of human liver tissues in low Earth orbit.
That is wild.
Was that on your bingo card?
No.
So this process could, they say, significantly enhance the development of complex tissues for medical use on Earth. Dr. Tammy T. Chang, who runs the Chang Laboratory for Liver Tissue Engineering at UC San Francisco, said, "Our findings indicate that microgravity conditions enable the development of liver tissues with better differentiation and functionality than those cultured on Earth." Adding that this represents a critical step toward creating viable liver tissue implants that could serve as an alternative or adjunct to traditional liver transplants. The group is also working on preservation techniques that could extend the life of engineered tissues and potentially be applied to whole organs.
So what you're going to need to do if you cultivate it in space, you're going to need to, find a better way than just like throwing it in a cooler to get it home, right?
Right. And well, they'll be able to, I think, bring the technology also back to Earth. But the idea is like, sort of speeding up this process while they're out there and being able to make like almost like a scaled down version of it, the actual organ, and, figure out some things there. But super exciting. I selected this story because I often bag on space a little bit. Nothing wrong with space.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
But, specifically like space tourism and the development of aerospace in response to it. But obviously we know there are some very compelling and critical applications. There's a lot of research being done at the ISS, things that are being enhanced or expedited based on the use of zero gravity. And so I like this story just as a reminder for me as to why we all, need all these damn rockets.
Yeah. Well, and when we think of, trying to have more industrial operations, not just in space, but also potentially on the moon or wherever, that's, this is a real world application of how it could change many people's lives.
Super exciting in that sense. And, you think about if you're on a wait list for an organ transplant, some people have very limited amount of time to be there. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of competition for those resources. And some people don't get, prioritized because of their health history or their age or things like that, where if you could change that in some way, just be so impactful for some families. So pretty exciting stuff to see where it goes.
No, very exciting stuff. Jeff, your thoughts on, what is it called? The tissue orb? Is that what this project is? Either way, making human livers more efficiently in space.
Well, I think that was the the thing that stuck out to me the most too is when you talked about the fact they could preserve the sample that much longer, because it's always time critical in terms of getting those things to who needs it.
Yeah, because sometimes when it's available, you might be next on the list, but it can't viably get to you in time based on where it is. So it's
when we tie this into, we've done a lot of stories on 3D printing organs and what we're doing now from on the medical side of things with all these technologies and how they're converging, and now we're using space exploration to make them better potentially. It's exciting times.
Yeah.
It is.
I never, until, I don't know, a few years ago, didn't pay enough attention. You know, it was always just, okay, the latest rocket sent another shipment of experiments to the International Space Station. And that sometimes was where it ended with me. But the more we started digging into what those specific experiments were and the type of, life-changing technology that they had on board, it's incredible. And so I understand that, sometimes people aren't, they see space and it's a non-starter, that they lose interest immediately. I mean, just look into what is going on at the ISS right now. It is some incredible work. My In Case You Missed It this week was a story about a handmade instrument with a 600-year history being invaded by machinery and mass manufacturing. So, I mean, obviously, that's why I picked it. The thumbnail was a bagpiper. The bagpipes have a 600-year-old handmade history. While mass-produced bagpipes have become the standard, the AFP recently featured one small manufacturer in Scotland, Kilberry Bagpipes, which continues to make bagpipes by hand. I've already said bagpipes more on the podcast than I ever would have guessed I ever would.
In your life.
About 200 episodes ago, yeah. This includes the Highland bagpipe, the most recognized version that's been a big influence on musical styles from the military in Britain to rock and punk music. Kilberry's process features 9 steps, including boring and shaping pipes, attaching mounts and ferrules, and applying finishing touches while assembling components. All in, it takes about 5 days of work per set. The company's craftsmen work on multiple bagpipes simultaneously, but make sure each set sounds the same. Most manufacturers use machinery to make bagpipes, but some say the difference between handmade and machine-made lies in the, quote, hand-turned shapes, the decorative designs, and the use of imitation ivory for the mounts. Kilberry says its bagpipes offer, quote, a distinct sound, and each has a unique appearance which appeals to consumers or customers worldwide. The company currently has a 2-year wait list, which I found incredible. Still, they have remained competitive. The company's Highland prices range from about $1,200 to more than $6,000. The starting price for a Highland with U.S.-based Gibson bagpipes is approximately $1,150. I chose this story, and not just because bagpipes are fun, but I thought this was a really interesting example of a manufacturer being able to maintain handmade quality, remain competitive with machine-made competitors, and still carve out a niche in an already probably small industry and survive. I felt like this is the type of story where we hear about these manufacturers with a product that has a 600-year-old legacy, and it just progress kills it. And I thought this was a really fascinating story of how it is kind of this company Kilberry has bucked all those trends and kind of remained a steady force in the bagpipe industry.
There's a thing. That's the bagpipe industry.
Yeah,
Wow.
the bagpipe industry. Jeff, I don't know.
Big bagpipe.
Yeah.
Big bagpipe.
Were you able to see how Kilberry was able to stiff arm Big Bagpipe as it was trying to
Muscle in on their business.
Yeah, with their automation and their mass manufacturing practices?
I mean, I think what it's really a testament to is the brand power and the legacy of that a brand can have, especially when you promote that and you talk about it. You talk about the quality elements of it as opposed to pricing or we're streamlining or whatever the case may be. And just when you reinforce that as your message and your lead, I think it can take you a lot of great places for a long time, which is basically what these guys have realized here.
Yeah, it was. I'm going to be honest. I was surprised that the global market supported more than one bagpipe manufacturer.
There is that.
It takes 5 days to make each set, so
Yeah.
I mean that's a while.
No, I mean, well, and they have orders out 2 years, so that's still a bit of job security as well. I think we've run some similar stories with there are still handmade globe manufacturers. There are still some of those niche industries out there that still are a little bit more on the artisan side of things. I don't know, and I think it's refreshing. It's, it's good to know that it still exists, right?
Totally. The craftsmanship part of it, I think, is just a great reminder that that's really where all of manufacturing started. It's just a person making a thing.
Yeah.
And obviously, as industrialization has developed and things have become more automated, that, is for the best in many industries. But other industries don't work that way. And they're always going to be just somebody handcrafting something forever, and they don't scale.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool to see what those are and how they work. And I thought it was an interesting story.
No, that is a good part of it. That some things just don't scale because scale's not there.
It's not there.
They don't have the sensitive wrists of David Manti to balance everything out.
I tell you what, I can hold a
That's
mass.
right, it's like this.
I can hold
Not like this.
It's this.
like
Yeah,
this.
I can hold a mass manufactured
Nope,
bagpipe in this hand.
An
and
eighth
I
of
can
an
hold
ounce heavier.
a Kilberry Highland in this hand, and I'll know.
Do you put your
Handmade.
pinky out when you're holding bagpipes as well?
No, only Tostitos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my
Tostitos.
that's my corn chip pinky.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, when I'm being fancy in the grocery aisle. Jeff, what is your, in case you missed it this week?
So I picked a story. Machine learning reveals large lithium potential in Smackover formation. I felt I was going to say smackdown.
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt there.
It was
but
right there.
Smackover.
Smackover.
So, story says using a combination of water testing and machine learning, a U.S. Geological Survey-led study estimated that there could be between 5 and 19 million tons of lithium reserves beneath southwestern Arkansas. If commercially recoverable, the lithium could meet the projected 2030 global demand for lithium in car batteries 9 times over. So it's important to know that we're still trying to figure out if this is actually salvageable, if we can get to it. But this Smackover formation is described as a relic of an ancient sea that left an extensive, porous, and permeable limestone geologic unit that extends under parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. It dates to the Jurassic geological time period and is known for its rich deposits of oil and bromine. Basically what this is, it is a brine, a lithium brine. So what they would have to do to get the lithium out of it is create ponds for this to flow into. The water evaporates, and you're left with basically like a lithium salt that you could then extract the lithium from and use for whatever. Thought this was interesting for a number of reasons. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about lithium right now when it comes to EVs, and that's sort of being one of the things that's driving up prices is sort of the unknowns in terms of supply chain and where we're going to source all of this from. But beyond that, lithium is used for a lot of things beyond just automotive batteries right now. It's used in a lot of medical instruments. It's used in a lot of metalworking. Anything where you're dealing with intense heat, we use lithium for. And right now in the U.S., we only have one other lithium mine, and that's in Nevada. We import about 25% of all the lithium that we need. This would eliminate that and provide opportunities for export. So I think this is going to be one to follow in terms to see what happens here. We're looking at huge job creations, potential huge economic growth in some areas of the country that maybe aren't known for having a lot of industry. So there's some opportunities there. And then obviously the long-term effects for lithium-ion battery production, which isn't too far away. We've got some Panasonic stuff going on in Oklahoma, some other things in Texas. So this could be interesting on a lot of levels. Again, it's figuring out how much of this can actually be extracted and used. And the process, making sure it's environmentally friendly as well. So very interesting. And plus the technology that was used to unearth it, using machine learning algorithms to basically assess, okay, we know what this isn't, so it should be this, is essentially kind of the approach used by this software. So machine learning and AI also factoring into the equation.
Yeah. I mean, 5 million tons
On the low end.
on the low end. That was the thing too for me, because I thought, well, first of all, the headline was, I was like, what is a Smackover formation?
Yeah.
And what does that even mean?
Never heard that word.
Yeah, never heard that before. Well,
Great name, right? Who names these things?
I don't know. And they,
Smackover?
when they name it, they certainly don't think anyone other than a few people in a geological survey are going to see it and just like get some sort of inside joke. Just like, hey, did you see Tim called it the Smackover formation? Yeah. But for me, I thought about, if this is where a large U.S. domestic supply chain starts, that maybe we would see a lot of development around this area. But it is so huge that depending on where you could effectively harvest it.
Yeah.
I mean, you would already, like you said, be kind of close to some of these EV developments in the South. So definitely really cool. And again, hopefully they can successfully, get it out of the ground. Anna, your thoughts on the Smackover formation. And did you notice how the formation is kind of the shape of like the Grinch lying down?
Oh, yeah, it is exactly like him.
It looks like the Grinch is sleeping underground.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Wow, David.
That's weird.
It's just super weird.
I wish we were live.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
He's just hibernating until Christmas.
So I wonder how much of the Grinch is developed. Like obviously we're looking at just a green map right now, but like underneath all this are people's homes and cities and shopping malls and
Hopefully not underneath it.
Yeah. Underneath this simulated Grinch. I'll be interested to see like what, how this would play out in that sense. It's not that this is just all vacant land and you're going to have homeowners that are going to say, I don't want a lithium pond next door to me. Mm-hmm. So all of that drama that's going to come along with that, I wonder, to your point, like how much of it is actually going to be accessible and extractable in that regard. Just will depend on how bad we need it and how much money is getting put into that project. So I'll be interested to see.
And hopefully it doesn't trigger things like sinkholes or when we've seen other extraction technologies, lead to some events that might make the area.
I mean, that is one of the things that they're optimistic about due to the fact that it's basically veins of liquid.
Oh, okay.
So it wouldn't be as dramatic as pulling a rock out.
Yeah.
So no earthquakes?
I mean, I'm not a geological guy. David's definitely more the academic, as we've uncovered on this podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
You would think, I don't know, as you're pulling liquid out, you could potentially fill it up with something solid to alleviate some of these concerns. I think the bigger focus is once they start drawing that water out, that brine out, can they actually extract the lithium from it? Mm-hmm. And they don't want to go through all these problems if they can't do that.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, did it say anything about how long that process would take to like fill a pond and then actually like
didn't see any specifics, but I mean it's a pretty big range between 5 and 19 million tons. I mean,
it's big ponds. Big ponds. Well, that was the biggest thing is because ideally it would just drain back to wherever you extracted it from, but in that time period, however long it takes for that to sift, would it make it back in time? Would you have to replace it? And then what would it look like if you replaced it and then it tried to get back there?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Still a wild story. And we do need to get a little bit more information on that naming mechanism. The person behind Smackover. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, let's move on to our final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
I just want to say thanks to Ben for stepping in for me last week. I was on a vacation and I went to a city that I've never been to, which was Boulder, Colorado. Oh. And we were told that there was a bear that lived near the house that we had rented. And we tried to attract the bear so we could see it. But
so you like baited the bear? You were trying to be, you're trying to be the Florida man in any story?
I'm just kidding. We didn't really do that. But we talked about it a lot and then we just didn't do it. But there's an apple tree outside. So the lady was like, well, there's a bear that likes to come and eat the apples.
Yeah.
FYI.
Just a heads up. Like that's on a note in the counter.
Yeah.
She's like walking out the door. Oh.
You know what? One more thing. There's a bear. And the house had a big wraparound porch. So I was like, I feel like this bear could sneak attack us at any time. But it didn't. That was a disappointment. I did want to see it. But I did also survive the trip. So that was nice.
Yeah. No, that's, man, that wasn't in the review materials.
Nothing no. And she said there was I think a bobcat also that liked to hang around.
Oh, that's good.
So we didn't see either one of those.
A lot of opportunities to observe wildlife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like very close up.
My goodness. That's, it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me. I'd be the same way. Just like, man, I hope we see it from afar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throw the apples far away.
Away.
Well, it's good to have you back. And, my final thought, I wanted to start by saying, I gave a lot of credit to Bill for making the desk, but really the desk is the vision of producer Alex. So I wanted to say thanks to producer Alex as well for kind of coming up with this thinking, can we do it? And then saying it to the right person, Bill, who not only would say yes, but be like, I'll have it done in 4 days.
He's like the Ron Swanson of our friend group.
He definitely
Just
is.
like, I'll be back in 45 minutes. And then
Yeah. Do you think this tree's big enough to make a canoe out of it? I could tell you in a day.
Yes. Bill is also the guy that when we were fishing a couple weekends ago, caught a muskie, which is not an easy thing to do, and stood perfectly still for the picture as the fish chomped down on his thumb.
Yeah.
But still made sure to get the picture and then said, hey guys, can you try to get the fish's mouth open?
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen the inside of a muskie's mouth, there's a lot of very sharp teeth.
oh
Yeah,
my God.
Yeah.
So, and then he just basically, again, Ron Swanson, like took some black electrical tape that was in the boat
I knew
and
it was
just
going to be taped. I knew it was going to be taped.
Bill, how's it doing? Fine. Keeps casting.
We also were able to have a couple of friends over this weekend for an adult sleepover, and that was a really good time. I do need to be more mindful of the size of the fires in the backyard, though, because some neighbors apparently had some concerns. But what
Did you start it with gas?
I didn't start it with gas. So what happened was, I thought sort of last minute, I was like, is it nice enough that people are going to want to have a fire? Because it had been kind of cold, but then we had that really warm snap. And I had 5 logs out back. And I was just like, this could be enough to maybe make a fire. But I had nothing to start it with. So I started it with just raking up pine needles. And then once we had those logs started and they started burning down, everyone was already outside. And I'm just like, I guess I'll just keep raking pine needles.
Here's what you do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. It wound up working out really well.
Best thing for starting fires.
Yeah.
Or like the charcoal on the grill. Found these things at Menards. They're small. Maybe, I don't know. Size, not like you put 3 of them in your palm.
Yeah.
They're just called like straw stacks.
Yeah.
And they're just pieces of straw, but they're bound together with like some wax.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
No.
Keep a box of those on hand. You will never not be able to start a fire.
So my brother makes, he calls them fire starters. You take an egg carton and you fill it with sawdust. And then he goes to rummage sales or wherever, Facebook Marketplace, gets old candles, melts them down and fills them. And you're right, though.
Yeah.
Those are the best things ever.
It's perfect.
Mix of wax and straw or wood. But talking about egg cartons, so when I was shopping for this friend's weekend.
It's an interesting segue.
Yeah, I was shopping for eggs.
Okay.
I'm at the grocery store. There is an 18-pack of organic eggs, and there's one missing. And it was the last package of these specific eggs that I wanted. And it's not like they were marked down or anything, but I felt like I needed another egg. So I just randomly took one from another brand and put it in.
Yeah.
So would you guys do that? Was I in the wrong? And because I felt guilty because I took it from, I guess, let's say a more premium brand and put it in the egg carton versus, like the Roundy's brand, the generic brand. And I was just like, I kind of took the egg and I put it in, closed it, and like looked around. I'm like I'm getting away with the world's like lowest cost caper. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with that though, right?
I don't think it's wrong. No, I how do you find yourself in these situations? Like,
I'm buying eggs for friends.
See cracked eggs, but never like missing ones. I've never seen that before.
I know it was so strange. Like someone had cracked an egg and they clearly pulled it out and just left it there. I was like, well, I guess the rest got to be good, right? But I
mean, personally, I probably would have just bought. I mean, what are we talking about? Like $1.50 difference?
Oh,
for a dozen eggs? I probably would have bought the one that was full.
Oh, the one that was full. Yeah. Okay. I
feel like that makes the most sense.
I don't know.
It's kind of out there. I don't know. just saying.
Or you could trigger a situation where every person has to take an egg out of the next one on the pile till the end of time.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I was giving them the opportunity to do the same thing. Yeah. All right. So I was fine. Completely normal.
I'm not going to say normal.
Well, either way.
Yeah.
Either way. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
So I celebrated my 49th birthday this week.
Woo.
Thanks to everybody for the celebrations and all that. And it came right on the back of our producer Eric and I play volleyball tonight. And we were supposed to play much later and now have an opportunity to move up. And those things converged to remind me of I'm sort of living in a different different priorities with this age. Being excited to be done with my activities sooner so I can get to bed at a decent time as a priority or something that really makes me happy, which wouldn't have been a thing, you know, at other points in my life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Definitely reinforced maybe my new station on things.
Yeah.
I've been there for a while, Jeff. It's great.
I mean, just thinking, man, we don't have to play at 10 o'clock. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter when you play. Well, I mean, I guess you guys played through summer, but so the first week of dodgeball is also this week. And man, when you're in it, you don't necessarily feel that age, but immediately after you start to. We were just like, oh boy. So it'll be good to get home sooner.
Get the ice on everything.
Well, any sort of recreational activity should not, if it's it should not start after 10. Like I feel like, especially in the middle of the week. I don't know.
We're so old.
It's not reasonable.
Just ridiculous.
Get to bed.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live. For Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.